I don't know what happened. You all, can you come on this side?
Yeah,
You want some people on this side?
Closest to the door. Right.
So we're good? Good afternoon, everyone. I am A.P. George, your Fort Bend County Judge, and I'm joined by, as you can see, numerous community members, elected officials, and community activists making a difference in our community and our people's life. And I'm joined by, as you know, our very own State Representative for State District 27, Ron Reynolds. He doesn't need any introduction. And of course, our county attorney, Bridget Ms. Lawson, and Mike Watson, Missouri City NAACP President, I believe, President, right?
No, there's life member.
Life member, and of course Linda Coleman is here. Linda, yes, thank you. And of course Cindy Ginnard, Democratic Party Chair, and Congressman Al Green's office is joined, Clarence. We're here to talk about something very important, and this. How many of you were here during lunchtime? We had an amazing event they put together, and our children are amazing, and the people, and Judge Watson, absolutely an amazing event you guys put together. It was very eye-opening, going through the timeline, going through the what happened in our county, what happened in our state, and the country. And so today we are, while talking that, celebrating African Americans and their contributions, their suffering, and they came a long way along with all of us. And now we want to talk about another injustice is happening, possibly happening in our world, and that is, you all might have heard what happened with our governor. See, when people say they don't want to talk about history, that scares me. Yes. Why do you want to learn history? Because we don't want to make the same mistake we made in the past. And if you don't want to talk about it, so you are getting ready to do that same mistake again. That's why it's important to talk about it when we all come together. Our voices are heard, and as Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rightfully said, injustice anywhere is a threat to the justice everywhere. And we all know that that is true. At this moment, we are facing threat to democracy, to our democracy, and creating draconian laws in some states and some politicians, and pushed divisive political motivation spread. And so that is not who we are. That's not as a community, as a state, as a county, as a country. And we are many times walking backward, I feel like. And we know that, in 1870 we said, you know what, it's important all men vote at that time. So that people of color also can vote, and then we fix that problem. And I said this before, I'm repeating it. Why? Because we are going backwards sometime. And in 1920 we said, oh, our mothers and sisters, our daughters also should vote. And that's how we fixed that problem, and didn't fix it. 1965, of course, Civil Rights Act, and we thought we fixed all the problem. What we are talking today, in 2022, voter suppression, 23, voter suppression, there are 1% people voting. And see, we are going pretty much, in some cases, backward. And we cannot allow that in a civilized society. And thank you this afternoon, Friday afternoon, you're joining me here today to say that diversity, equity, inclusion, which we celebrate. And I said this afternoon, we actually, in Fort Bend County, when I came into office, and we said, we're going to celebrate our people. It doesn't matter. It's not my job to look at what color or what age or what sex you are, and that's not my job. and we celebrate anyone and everyone who are part of our county. That is exactly what we will continue to do. As I mentioned this afternoon, and also we had an amazing event about celebrating African Americans contributed to make our county a better place. And also a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact, we were outside, standing outside and talking about another going backward deal, SB 147. You all know that, joined by, of course, many of our State Representative Ron Reynolds and Dr. Suleiman Lalani, our new State Representative, Sheila Jackson Lee, Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee, our Congresswoman. Many people joined together to say that, you know what? You know SB 147. Anybody don't know SB 147, what it is? Everybody knows. And creating a law, sometimes we are very good at fixing a problem which doesn't exist. And so this is like, as you know, there are 4 countries mentioned. Their citizens cannot own land in state of Texas. Anytime you isolate a community or a person or a culture, red flag right there. Right there. Why? Because I don't know what you're going to do next.
That's right.
I don't know what you're going to do next. Exactly. And I don't know what you're going to do next. And so we are going to stand up and fight. And today, we are speaking out against Governor Abbott's order to state agencies and public universities to stop using diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in hiring. Going backward. And you know what? What is the problem with that? I don't understand. And when we did a disparity study last year, we authorized a disparity study in Fort Bend County. It was a 3-2 vote. Why is that? We're just trying to find out how we are doing, how we are, county business is distributed. Just trying to find out. We're not saying we are even taking any action. Why these two people on the Commissioner's Court voted against it? Yeah, the simple reason they know what is going to be in that study, right? We all know what is going to be that study, and it's coming out. You're going to hear from us about that. It is going to be an eye-opener about the businesses happening in Fort Bend County. And so, as we celebrate Black History Month and African Americans' contributions and suffering, as I mentioned before, it is important we stand up towards when we feel there is injustices happening. It is important, and so especially it is important because if it wasn't for the existence of the laws prohibiting discrimination, we wouldn't be having any standard in hiring. Sure. These laws put us in position where we are making sure people of all kind of background, all color and creed, and everybody could get hired. And so these all laws and policies in the book for a reason. Somebody saw that there is injustice happening, so it need to be fixed. And that's why it is. This action by Governor is also an attack against people of color, as you know, people with disabilities, LGBTQ, and also veterans.
Right.
And it is important we stand up and say that's not okay. And also there is a saying, more and more, we enjoy a lot of things in this country so much, because I travel the world and I see that. I'm so thankful I live in this country. Amen. But we enjoy this, but this reminds us every day saying freedom is not free. It is important to stand up. It is important to stand up and say that is not okay. I'm not going to agree with that, and I'm going to stand up and fight. And I see, thank you for this afternoon joining me here, as at this time I wanted to invite our State Representative Ron Reynolds, a good friend, and always available, always been out there fighting. Sometimes I tell Ron, Ron, I just pray for you. You are in Austin, right? So I just pray for you so that you could do your jobs. And you know that he got to run to Washington, D.C. last session. And so all this stuff he do to make our county and our state and our country a better place. Now, I will ask you to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge George, for assembling us today for this important discussion about really Governor Abbott's attempt to take us back. And when you were just talking about freedom and Dr. King, I remember a quote he made is so appropriate for this discussion, where he said that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor, it must be demanded by the oppressed. That is so true. And he also said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. In 2023, it's shameful that Governor Abbott is trying to take us back. You know, Judge George gave us a history lesson. It wasn't until a great Texan by the name of President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that racial discrimination was prohibited in the workplace. That prohibited discrimination based on race, gender, national origin. It has been expanded with the Americans with Disabilities Act. But it wasn't until 1964, after many people, the NAACP leading, many people of good conscience, protesting, marching, and many people dying literally for the rights that we enjoy today. As we celebrate Black History Month, we stand on the shoulders of those who made good trouble so they could break down those racial barriers and Jim Crow laws that prohibited people who look like me from serving. I'm the first African-American elected state representative in Fort Bend County since Reconstruction. Fort Bend County had whites-only primaries until the 1950s. Whites-only primaries until the Supreme Court struck it down, thanks to Fort Bend residents, Mr. Melton, Arizona Fleming. Those are history lessons that we need to know. Let us never forget. And here is Governor Abbott in the most diverse state trying to roll back the clock because there are too many, I guess, he didn't really say with specificity, too many minorities, I guess, that are finally getting opportunities that have been closed to them since the inception of this country. And when you look at those disparity studies that Judge George was just talking about, you're talking about a very small percentage right now in universities. I talk to people, University of Texas, other universities, very few of the faculty members are African American, Hispanic, or Asian, very few. So is Governor Abbott troubled by those very few? It should be more troubling to you guys that he even pronounced this on Black History Month in a state that has more African Americans than any other country, any other state in the country. Texas does. So this should be a wake-up call for us. You know, this critical race theory nonsense was first. Then they came out with voter suppression, Jim Crow 2.0, which we fled to DC, because the 2020 census, it scared them. It showed that 95% of the growth in this state was because of Asians, African Americans, and Hispanics. Those are my statistics. Those were the census. And we had an undercount. It's probably more than 95%, but 95% based on the 2020 census. So they're afraid of the growing demographics, but our diversity is our strength. And Governor Abbott is afraid of that diversity, apparently, because there is no compelling reason why. I'm glad our county attorney is here as I close, because he tried to assert in the memo that it was unconstitutional. But there has been no evidence of such. No Supreme Court decision, Judge Watson, no Attorney General's opinion. In fact, the U.S. Department of Education and the Secretary of Education has said that DEI policies, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are legal and legitimate. There's no quotas. There's no one saying you have to have 10%. That's illegal, right? That's illegal based on the Croson decision. That's illegal. But diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are a viable way to attract and attain diversity in the workplace. And I'm proud of Judge George for having this press conference in the most diverse county in the state, arguably in the country. So Fort Bend is going to fight. Fort Bend is going to speak out. I'm proud to be chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, and we have been making good trouble. I'm probably, have a big target on my back from the governor and all those, because I've been speaking about it. Y'all may have heard me, and we have allies with the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, LULAC, and the state NAACP. I was joined by State President Gary Blesso. So we're going to continue to fight, and this is my final call to action. We want people of good conscience. Just like after John Lewis was beaten to a pulp as he tried to cross the Evan Pettis Bridge, what's known as Bloody Sunday. People were outraged. White people, everybody that had a conscience, that had a heart. And they came together collectively to make good trouble, which led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I'm hopeful that as people view this, that they will be as equally outraged and push back against Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, who's also said he states it. One of my colleagues, State Representative Tepper, who filed House Bill, I think it's 1006, which would defund universities that have DEI policies. So we want people of good conscience. This is a call to action. Republicans, independents, if you want to be on the right side of history, then speak up and speak out against this discriminatory policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I just want to apologize. I didn't even see you, ma'am. I mean, I'm so sorry. Our district clerk, Beverly Walker, is also joined in our class. Thank you. And I just wanted to invite our county attorney, Ms. Lawson, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, Fort Bend County. It's my pleasure to be here, and be here as the first Black woman elected into the position of county attorney in the state of Texas and Fort Bend history. I can say this: diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a political platform, and it should not be, because we know that people of all colors make up all parties. So just as State Representative Ron Reynolds asked for you all to come to action on this issue, on this topic, I charge and I ask that everyone who is of a diverse background, regardless of your political background, please challenge this theory. Challenge what has been said by our governor in terms of shutting down and disallowing diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Ask the questions as to why. Really research and find out. We are a diverse nation, not just a diverse county and not just a diverse state. So what is the threat? I will tell you this: diversity, equity, and inclusion has made this country one of the greatest countries in this world. That is why people from all walks of life come here. They come here for the opportunity to have a better life, because America has always represented opportunity for all, regardless of background, regardless of religion, regardless of any differences. Why would we now say no to that? That is essentially against what America stands for. I am happy to say this: Fort Bend County, as the most diverse county in this country, I'm sure is happy to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can tell that by our neighborhoods. You can tell that by our schools. You can tell by going into our local malls when you look and see how many people of so many diverse backgrounds are happy to live here, to work here, and to play here. So Fort Bend County will lead, as we always have, and we will lead in charging such theories of hate, which would shut down and close doors to backgrounds, to people of different backgrounds. We are leading our nation in many ways, and we will lead the charge to fight against anything that would stand against diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, I'm happy to be here as the first Black woman elected to county attorney in Texas, and I hope there will be many, many more besides me. Thank you.
Indeed, well said. It is everything we are. I mean, we heard this before. I think Ron said this. Anything we enjoy is somebody fought for it, and somebody fought for it. And I this afternoon I said, I, as a brown person coming from South Asian background, I was able to stand on the shoulders, as Ron mentioned, of the contributions and every sacrifices they made by the African American community for years. And so we need to continue to fight. And when you talk about fighting, one name comes to our mind, right? NAACP. And their contribution, and they are always fighting. And I'm just engaged with them about redistricting case they filed against the state of Texas, and I'm engaged with that conversation. And I just wanted to invite Mike Watson, representing Missouri City and its vicinity NAACP. Please come forward.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, everybody.
I'm here actually to emphasize the fourth movement of Dr. King's symphony, and that was economic development and improvement that started Operation Push. That was his fourth movement. He didn't live long enough to get into it. He devolved that to people like Andy Young and Jesse Jackson. But what's really important, I'm a program child. From Mobile, Alabama, Mama never made more than $20,000 a year, but I got scholarships to go to Duke University and Columbia University School of Law, graduated both with honors, and from Columbia with honors in international law. So, might not have had much, didn't have any connections, no trust fund, but I did. And for me, it's important to give back to the community. But what I also saw, and I invite everybody to go to CNBC, Bloomberg, or Forbes, and you will see the movement that diversity, equity, and inclusion around the boardroom and around the C-suite, as we call it, the executive suites, make a difference in returns on those stocks and bonds. And if you don't believe me, go to the stock trustee companies that advise holders, institutional holders, and personal holders how to vote on certain elections or an initiative, ISS and Glass Lewis. And they will show you the statistics. Companies such as Dell, that had Texas-based Dell, that had these initiatives, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley International, their returns are higher than the Exxons of the world, who rebuke and are scared of those type of initiatives, but Shell embraced them, and Shell's stock returns are higher than Exxon, and that's why now the price adjusted is higher. So I just invite our governor. I said, don't be a baby DeSantis. Don't be a baby DL Trump. Embrace the future. Texas has great potential, but even Tesla will have to leave. SpaceX will have to leave because they won't be able to hire the brain power that they need, because the color of the brain power is forever changing, and the cream is forever changing. And they need to have workers at the bottom of the ladder all the way up who are the best and brightest. And so if he doesn't embrace this, you won't have them coming to Texas A&M. They won't be going over to UT Austin, okay? Because these folks are looking for the best. They're looking for the best at Morehouse, Howard, and TSU, okay? Prairie View. Jeff Bezos' wife gave $50 million unencumbered dollars to Prairie View, to Dr. Simmons, to say, do what you want. We believe in you. This is the future. We believe in the future. So I would just tell everybody, tell our governor, first, please register to vote and get people to the polls, GOTV. But say Texas will sink in its own swamp unless you embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right? So that's what the NAACP is. Thank you, President Paul.
Thank you so much. Very well said. I don't know if it can be said anything better than that. That is so wonderful. Yes, yes. Diversity, and I said this many times, diversity is our strength. And it is going to add value. And look at Fort Bend County. Fort Bend County is, and I talked to Kinder Institute, Stephen Kleinberg, he said, we are 50 years ahead of many parts of the country. Our children are living in a world where some part of the country, their children are going to live 50 years from now. Think about it. And so we are, and we support diversity, equity, inclusion, and that is only going to add value to us. And I just wanted to invite Fort Bend County Democratic Party Chair, Cindy Ginnia. Thank you.
Educator.
Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Judge. Thank you. Folks, I don't know what state Governor Abbott lives in. I just wonder, because Texas was diverse before diversity was cool. We live on the border. It has always been a state of diversity. That didn't happen 5 or 10 years ago. So he takes on this mean-spiritedness, and that's what it is. And it is not an accident that he did it during Black History Month. Oh, it didn't just happen to be. He purposely did that. He wanted to mar the celebration of Black History Month. Folks, all I can say to you is don't get comfortable and please don't get complacent. The fight is not over. It's why I fight the fight, because of these continual attacks and attempts to move us backwards, because that is what they are, going backwards. We've already been here, done this, and here we are again, fighting the same old fights over again. I was born in 58, so I was a little girl growing up during the 60s. I remember it all. I remember it all. By the way, I get my Medicare this year, so they better not mess with me. But I want to encourage you to stand up, stand strong, be a part of it, because you see, we cannot stop. We're not there. You know, we've arrived. Oh, no. There's no arrival. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. It is very well said. And I just wanted to say, if you don't have the freedom, doesn't matter what you have. If you don't have the diversity, it doesn't matter what you have. If you don't have inclusion, doesn't matter what you have. And we are the best. And we are going to be the best. But this kind of draconian measures you're bringing intentionally for a reason. Intentionally. And that is insulting to me, and he did this during Black History Month. It is insulting to the African American community at large. And so it's important we send this message to everybody and anybody you know, and continue to say this. We believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that is our strength. Once again, thank you for joining me and all these community leaders this afternoon. And the fight goes on. That's what it's all about. Let's get up and fight, and also always remember, freedom is not free. We need to stand up. Thank you so much. Oh, and initially you decided not to say anything, and then come on. Clarence Holiday is actually representing Congressman Al Green's office. Please go ahead, sir. Sorry about that.
The words I'm going to say are not necessarily the words of Congressman Al Green. As you know, he has a strong voice of his own, and he will speak loudly on this diversity issue as well as any others. But I've experienced some things myself that I wanted to add to the diversity conversation. My friend KP and I first met because of some school board issues. It's an unlikely pairing, but KP and I were on the side of something that needed to be done with the Fort Bend ISD, and we worked on it, we worked together. We are a diverse group. KP and Ron mentioned some things about history, but I was a part of that history. You know, when the civil rights laws were passed, shortly after that, I hired into the oil refineries. I was the only African-American electronics instrumentation person in the oil refineries. Before they started hiring African-Americans, they actually came through the Department of Labor, and people came through, and they taught us not to react to people that spit on us and provoked us into fighting and doing things like that, because we would lose our jobs even though we didn't provoke anything. And that's the way it was. You had a group of people controlling everything, and if you look at what the governor does a lot of times now, he speaks to his audience. He invites an audience and he speaks to them. He don't hear from a diverse audience. Yeah. He doesn't have to. But somehow we got to make that message heard. That's all I'm going to say today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.